Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're focusing on a skill that is, let's say, overlooked, but absolutely essential. It's the foundation for every healthy relationship and for your own mental health.
It really is. We're talking about setting and enforcing strong personal boundaries.
And if you're someone who often feels, I don't know, resentful or maybe just burned out by work demands that seem to bleed into every part of your life,
Or depleted after spending time with certain people.
yes, exactly, then this dive is for you. Our mission today is pretty direct. We want to quickly unpack why boundaries are non-negotiable for self-respect.
We'll also look at the psychology, the deep-seated reasons we all struggle with this.
And most importantly, we want to give you the specific, practical, assertive language that you can literally start using today.
It's a life skill most of us were just never taught. And boundaries, they get misunderstood. People think of them as walls,
Right, like you're shutting people out.
but they're not. They're simply the limits, the rules, or the guidelines you set for how people can interact with you. They protect your space, physical, emotional, all of it.
One of our sources had a great line for this.
Yeah, it said, boundaries are the foundation which our relationships are built upon, not the ceiling. I love that.
That's a great way to put it.
At their core, it's really about self-preservation. When you have healthy boundaries, you're actively protecting your finite resources.
Your energy, your time.
Exactly. And doing that is what prevents that slow, quiet buildup of resentment when you feel like you're being used or just taken for granted. We have to see it as a form of active self-care.
Okay, I think we have to start right there. The concept of a boundary sounds simple, but how do we tell the difference between a healthy one and, building a rigid, isolating wall?
That distinction is absolutely key. Healthy boundaries usually fall into two main categories. The first is physical boundaries, which is pretty much what it sounds like. Limits on personal space, touching, how close someone can get. And this can be really different depending on culture and context, of course.
And the second type.
That would be your emotional boundaries. These are the limits on how people get to engage with your inner world.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it could mean limiting how much you share about your personal life with, say, a coworker. Or, and this is a big one, how much emotional energy you give to listening to someone else's problems before you have to step back and take care of yourself.
And the health of these boundaries,
Yeah,
it's all about how flexible they are.
precisely. Healthy boundaries are firm, but they're not brittle. They adapt. They change based on the situation and, the depth of the relationship.
Right. The boundary you have with a new friend isn't the same as with your spouse.
Exactly. Unhealthy boundaries are the opposite. They're either way too rigid,
Yeah.
you push everyone away, you never let anyone in, or they're way too lax. You just never, ever say no.
So if this is all about being healthy and preserving ourselves, why is it such a universal struggle? Let's talk about the psychological roadblocks, especially for anyone who identifies as a people pleaser.
Oh, the struggle is real because the hurdles are so deep-seated. The sources we looked at point to a couple of major things. The first is this internalized feeling of being selfish or just feeling this intense guilt for even having needs.
The moment you think about saying no, the guilt just flares up.
It does. And the second big hurdle is fear. Specifically, the fear of conflict, the fear of disappointing people, or just the fear of being rejected.
Wanting people to like you.
Yes. If your main goal is to be liked, setting a limit feels like you're risking their approval, which, we're biologically wired to want to avoid.
And for introverts, that's even worse, right?
It had compounded, yeah. For introverts or highly sensitive people, they're also avoiding sensory overload. So sometimes they'll say yes just to end the interaction faster.
Only to suffer the consequences later. This fear of conflict pushes us into these behaviors that, in the long run, are actually destructive to the relationship. The goal isn't to fight, it's to be assertive.
Absolutely. Assertiveness is that healthy middle ground. It's about recognizing and communicating your thoughts and your feelings and your wants honestly,
But respectfully.
but respectfully, while also respecting the rights of the other person. It's what some call the I count and you count position. Both of you matter.
I think to really get what assertiveness is, we have to contrast it with the other styles. Because I think most of us default to one of these, especially when we're stressed.
For sure. Think of it like a spectrum of power. On one end, you have passive behavior.
The classic people pleaser.
Right. You avoid any confrontation, you always give in, you swallow your resentment, and you feel like a victim. It's the discount self, count other mindset. You agree to work late every single night, but then complain about it to your friend later.
Okay, so what's on the other end of the spectrum?
That's aggressive behavior. This is using intimidation or blaming or coercion. It's reactive, and it's designed to dominate the other person.
That's account self, discount other.
You got it. It looks
Oh.
like yelling or using really harsh language like, you always ruin everything.
And then there's the really tricky one in the middle, passive-aggressive behavior.
Ah, yes. That's the indirect hostility. Sarcasm, procrastination, the silent treatment. It comes from a belief that you have no real power to say what you want directly.
So you undermine them instead.
And in doing so, you discount both of you. Discount self, discount other. Assertiveness is the way out of that whole messy cycle. It demands clear, direct communication.
And the main tool for that clarity is the I message, which I love because it shifts the focus away from blaming someone's character.
And toward explaining your own internal experience.
Oh.
Exactly. When you use you statements like you're always late or you never listen, just immediately triggers defensiveness.
And the conversation is over before it even starts.
It is. An I message is so much easier for the other person to actually hear.
So let's break down that four-part structure again, because this formula is something everyone should, memorize.
Definitely.
First, you say when, and you state a specific, observable action, no judgment.
Just the facts.
Then second, I feel or I think, and you state your internal feeling. Third, because, and this is where you explain the need that isn't being met.
It's a why.
And finally, fourth, I would prefer that, and you state a specific, actionable preference.
The goal here is just to remove that subjective judgment. So instead of telling a colleague, you're so unprofessional for leaving early, you use the structure.
Right. So it would be something like when you leave the office at 4:30,
I feel stressed.
because I'm left scrambling to finish everything alone.
I would prefer that we coordinate our schedules so the workload is split evenly until 5, you see. One is an accusation, the other is a proposal for a solution.
That translation is so powerful, it turns a fight into a problem-solving session. Okay, so let's move to the really practical stuff. The ready-to-use phrases our sources recommend, these are the tools to help you say no without feeling like you need a huge explanation or apology.
Yes, the goal is kindness, but firmness. The words you choose have immediate power.
Let's start with capacity, because overcommitment is probably the #1 driver of burnout. When you're just totally overextended, you can say this, I would love to help with that, but I don't have the capacity at the moment.
And that phrase, at the moment, is key. You're declining the request right now, respectfully, but you're not burning a bridge or making up some long, fake excuse about why you can't.
It works for a new project at work or for a friend asking you to help them move.
Exactly.
Okay, next. For those moments you feel pressured to just give an immediate yes, especially if it's a big decision, you say, I need some time to think about that before answering.
This is a fantastic defense against emotional pressure. It just buys you time. It lets you check in with your own priorities and your own energy before you commit to something you'll end up regretting.
What about when you're in a really emotionally charged argument or someone just isn't taking no for an answer?
Then you can use, I need some space, and we'll reach out when I'm ready.
That's a very firm physical and emotional boundary.
It is. You're taking control of the timeline. You're saying, this conversation will happen, but it will happen on my terms when I feel regulated enough to have it.
Here's a big one, I think, for dealing with difficult family members or even long-term friends. I value our relationship, but I need to set a boundary here.
I love that one. It's so clear and mature. You're making a distinction between the person and their behavior. You're saying, I'm committed to you, but I'm not committed to this dysfunctional way we're interacting.
And if someone asks you a really personal question you don't want to answer, you don't owe them an explanation.
Not at all. You can just say, I don't feel comfortable talking about that topic.
Then just leave it there.
Period. You can follow it up with silence. You don't have to justify your right to privacy.
What about when someone is speaking to you disrespectfully? Maybe it's a boss or a parent, someone in a position of authority.
You still have the right to demand respect. You can say calmly but firmly, please don't speak to me in that way. It sets an immediate, clear standard for how you expect to be treated.
And finally, one for collaboration. When you respect someone's idea, but you have your own path. I love that we have the same goal, but I believe we're thinking about different paths to get there.
It acknowledges their validity without you having to give up your own perspective.
These are such powerful tools. Now let's talk about applying them, specifically where it's often the hardest, in our intimate relationships and with family. And let's start with more sensitive people, introverts, empaths, who often just soak up the stress of others.
For anyone prone to that kind of emotional or sensory overload, boundaries are basically a survival mechanism. They're so susceptible to empathy overwhelm.
Getting burned out by other people's problems.
Yes. So the first step for them is to identify their personal energy drainers.
And drainers aren't always people, right?
Right. They can be activities like doom scrolling on your phone or constantly managing a family member's emotional state or just listening to someone's problems for hours on end without a break. You have to acknowledge your right to set a limit on that.
And your right to recharge. That alone time is non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
In romantic partnerships, things get even more complex. The expectation can be that you merge your lives, and that can really erode personal limits. Jay Shetty highlights 5 essential boundaries that go beyond just needing alone time.
Yeah, the alone time boundary is crucial for recharging, but there's also the friendship boundary.
What's that?
That means making it really clear that your friendships, your social circle outside the relationship, are essential to you. It's about managing a partner's potential jealousy and protecting that time for yourself.
That's a big one.
Then there's the idea boundary. Partners can often start to merge their thoughts, but you need space to express your own way of thinking, even if it contradicts theirs. And the financial boundary, understanding your individual relationship with money before you blend finances. It prevents so much conflict later on.
And the last one he mentions is the purpose boundary, which sounds a little metaphysical, but is actually really practical.
It is. It's about protecting your personal mission, your big goals, your non-negotiable values. If your purpose is tied to, say, going back to school, a healthy boundary ensures your partner supports that time commitment instead of seeing it as an inconvenience to them.
You protect your identity from getting totally consumed by the relationship.
That's it, exactly.
Moving on to work and family, the advice seems to come down to 2 words: clarity and consistency. So at work, how do we push back against that always-on culture?
You have to create visible boundaries. Set very clear expectations for your working hours. And, this is the hard part, stick to them. If you work from home, use visual cues.
Like headphones on means do not disturb.
Right. Or do not disturb status on your chat program. And crucially, when you get an email or a message after hours, do not apologize for not answering. Instead, you respond professionally the next morning. Something like, I saw this came in after 6, so I was offline, but I'll prioritize it first thing this morning.
Family and friends are often the hardest, though. The history and the sense of obligation just clouds everything. And when you finally set a boundary, the pushback can be so intense.
It will be. If people are used to your boundaries being lax, your change is going to disrupt their comfort. You have to be ready for that and stand firm. And that brings us to the really crucial missing piece for most people, establishing consequences.
Okay, that's a nuance we need to unpack. We can't just tell people to set consequences.
Yeah.
How do you do that without it sounding like a threat? What does a healthy consequence look like?
A consequence is simply the action you will take to protect your boundary if it gets violated again. It's not a threat, it's a statement of self-protection.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say your parent continually calls you at work even though you've asked them not to. You'd say, I love talking to you, but if you call me again during my work hours, I will have to silence my phone until after 5 p.m.
So the consequence is about controlling your own behavior, not theirs.
Exactly. That's the shift from being passive-aggressive to being assertive.
So for the listener who is ready to start this right now, what are the final practical steps they should take?
Okay, so we've synthesized the therapeutic advice into 4 key actions. First, you have to internalize and acknowledge your basic rights. You have the right to say no. You have the right to be treated with respect. If you don't truly believe that, you'll never be able to enforce it.
That's the foundation.
Second, practice on low-stakes issues with easy people first. Don't start by confronting the most difficult person in your life. Start by just saying no to a casual invitation you don't actually want to go to.
Build the muscle.
Build the muscle. Third, and this is so important for people pleasers, accept the guilt and the fear. They're going to show up. They're normal. But you can't let them control your decision. You have to act assertively despite the guilt.
And finally,
Consistency is everything. A boundary you set once and then let slide isn't a boundary. It's just a suggestion. You have to calmly and consistently reinforce your limits every single time they're tested.
this whole process, it takes enormous emotional courage. And this leads to a final thought I pulled from the sources. If setting a boundary reveals that a relationship was unhealthy all along, and maybe it even leads to that relationship ending, that's still a huge, painful loss. How do we emotionally cope with the idea that advocating for ourselves might cost us someone we care about?
That is the ultimate difficult truth of this work, and we cope by reframing it. Boundaries are not designed to drive people away. They are designed to give other people back the responsibility for their own needs, their own wants, and their own desires.
So if a relationship requires you to constantly sacrifice your own well-being,
It wasn't a sustainable or healthy relationship to begin with. The profound thought to carry with you is this. When a relationship ends because you set a healthy boundary, the boundary didn't break the relationship.
the boundary just revealed what was already broken.
Exactly. It revealed the toxicity that was already there through the other person's unwillingness to respect you as a whole person. Your primary responsibility is always to yourself. And healthy boundaries are what ensure you remain whole enough to genuinely connect with the people who will respect your limits.